Good day and welcome to the Evening Review. We have a very special edition this evening, but before we tell you more about that, let's look at today's headlines. And I'm joined by the Namibian Sun editor, Toivo Njabela, and he's here to tell us exactly what we can expect from Namibian Sun after today.
Yeah, so thank you, Ashley, for the opportunity to be on your platform tonight. So we are very excited today at Namibian Sun because we are facing out our old look, which we have clung on for the past 12 years. And tomorrow ushers us into a new era of the new look and new design and new logo of Namibian Sun. And the rationale really about or behind this whole thing is to say that the content of this newspaper has evolved over the years. What was, if you grab two copies, one from 2017, for example, when the original design came up, and today's paper, you will see the difference in how, in the kind of issues that we cover right now. We are more into current affairs, policy issues, shaping the national agenda, or contributing essentially to the national agenda and to the national discourse. And we needed a look and feel that speaks to that, and that is essentially why we thought we needed a design that speaks to the current style of reporting that we have.
And on that note, we can maybe share with our viewers exactly how that new design is going to look. And welcome back. Toivo, new look, but what can the viewers and the readers expect tomorrow on the Namibian Sun?
Yeah, so we are really having a solid edition tomorrow. My personal favorite is the cabinet scorecard, where we are assessing the failures and successes of all members of cabinet who served for the last 5 years, including those who are no longer in cabinet now, but they have served at some stage. Yes. So that is in. There's a story about the status of Mike Nghikembua, who's the CEO of Fishco, who's currently in prison over the fish rot scandal. There are issues around his employment contract at Fishco. And so there is a story. The readers must just get a copy and find out what exactly is the issue around it. So and more news, but those two are some of them.
Toivo, I'm going to let you go at the moment because you're quite busy still finishing off the newspaper.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show.
And welcome back once again. Please don't forget to catch the ShopRite Independence Day combo advert later in this program. But moving on to our first portion of today's episode, with the coronavirus firmly in the mind of Namibians, and in fact probably all citizens of the world at this moment, Jemima Bucas sat down with World Health Organization representative in Namibia, Dr. Charles Sagoe-Moses, earlier this week. He speaks about the multiplication of cases around the world and reveals who are most vulnerable to the virus and how exactly it's transmitted.
Good evening, my name is Jemima Bucas, and today we have in the studio with us Dr. Sagoe-Moses from WHO. Good evening, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Jemima. I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm delighted to have you here as well, Doctor. Doctor, can you please, with the outbreak of coronavirus in Namibia, can you please share with us what role is WHO playing in helping and supporting Namibia to fight this and even globally?
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let me start by putting this into context of the global situation, because at the moment we have over 165,000 cases in over 150 countries, with over 6,500 and counting people who have died. In the African region alone, we have over 27 countries and counting who have reported cases. We also have over 350 cases and 7 deaths. So this to give you an idea of the magnitude of the problem globally, but also to emphasize the fact that over the past 2 to 3 weeks, there has been an exponential increase in the number of cases, and also the number of countries that have reported cases. That the number of cases have increased by about over 13 times. And then the number of countries that have reported cases for the first time have even quadrupled. So we are looking at something which is happening at a very fast pace, but also the scale. And that's why we declared a pandemic. And if you look at that, then you see what we are dealing with at the moment. And we need to respond to it in a very active way. And therefore the WHO has called on everyone, called on government and our member states to approach it, or to use what we refer to as comprehensive and blended approach to address it, because we need to adopt what we call all government approach. The Ministry of Health alone cannot handle this. It should be entire government. And no one person in society can, so all society. So it's all government, all society approach to ensure that together we can address this problem. Now, how do we address it? We can address it by containing the outbreak and also mitigating its effect. We want to put a lot more emphasis on the containment, because this is an outbreak that can be contained. Really, because if we look at the mode of transmission, once you're able to ring fence, then you can ensure that those who have it, like first of all, we have categorized the countries into about 4 different types. Those who don't have any case at all. So those, to ensure that preventive measures are put in place that they don't get any case. But those who have sporadic cases, they contain the very first few cases. Then those who may have cluster of cases littered around also contain them in the clusters. Then the 4th one would be those who have transmission in the community, which is where almost everybody is transmitting. That is where nobody wants to go. So in doing that, we are encouraging governments to really be able to test. You see, because if you are dealing with a virus like that, you need to know what you are dealing with, and you need to know where it is. And so we should be able to test someone who has symptoms to know that he has the virus or not. Once we test the person and say the person has the virus, then we need to ensure that that person who has the virus is isolated, so that he does not transmit the virus to others who don't have the virus. Once the person is isolated, then we also trace the people who the person may have been in contact with. So aggressive contact tracing to ensure that everyone who may have been in contact with is followed up. So we monitor. That's why we talk about the self-quarantine and all that, to make sure that anybody who may have had encounter is followed up, and then as soon as the person begins to have symptoms, etc., we also take care of the person. We test to be sure. Once it's tested, then we move on to treatment. We need to treat, and we need to give all the necessary treatment to support. And the treatment is supportive. So so we are talking about being able to test, able to treat, and able to trace whoever this person may have been in contact with. If we're able to do that, then we can somehow contain the situation. Now, we must also remember that there's a vulnerable group, and these are the people who are above 60 years and people who have underlying health conditions, like you have a heart condition, a lung condition, kidney condition, you are diabetic, you have cancers. In general, those who are immunocompromised, these are particularly vulnerable, and that if they get infected, they get critically ill, and some of them are not able to make it. It's also important to explain that if you take about 100 of us who may get infected, about 80 or so will get a mild disease, and they'll be fine, like you get in other flus. About 15% will get a severe illness, and then 5 will be critically ill. And those 5 tend to be those that I mentioned. They are the vulnerable groups. Those who are above the age of 60 years and have underlying
chronic diseases.
Exactly. So it's important to be clear that it's not everybody who gets it that gets a severe disease or who gets critically ill. And a majority, about 80%, will get a mild disease.
Now, Doctor, obviously, as you know, the fear is real. Panic is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think the question on everybody's lips, those that are not medical professionals, is how does the virus work? And after this, can you please explain to us, in a family setup, how will self-quarantine work?
Okay, so let's start from the first part of the question. The virus is transmitted through person-to-person contact, and that's why we actively discouraging mass gathering. Because when you are in a crowd, because it is transmitted through droplets. Droplet comes about when you are coughing, you are sneezing, even when you are talking. And then these droplets may go directly into somebody's face, or wherever, or fall on surfaces. So if we're able to cut that or reduce the chances of someone who is sick transmitting through the droplet, that's a major way of trying to cut it or cut the transmission chain. Now, so let's say you are in a family and you are positive. The thing is, we would have to isolate you.
By yourself?
No. The isolation, you see, when you are positive, and another important fact is, most of the time, you begin to transmit when you are symptomatic. You begin to show signs and symptoms that, like you start the headache, the coughs, and other symptoms. There are very few cases where asymptomatic people can transmit. So mostly, it's those who are having the symptoms. And you need to be isolated. The reason for that isolation is not only for the others who are not infected, but also for yourself. So you are giving the best care. And the emphasis is you need to get early care. That's why we advise you go to hospital early enough so that you are given all the necessary care. You don't wait till it's too late. So you are isolated and given all the necessary care in a health facility. So you are moved out of your home. Now those who are at home that you may have been in contact with are quarantined so that they don't go outside the home to infect others. You know, so, and the reason is to observe them, monitor them to see if there are any changes. So as soon as we see a change, we test and see whether they have the virus. And they have no signs and symptoms in the virus. So it is a gradual, it is a graduated process. The aim is that we want to interrupt the transmission.
Now, Doctor, this virus's incubation period is roughly 14 days.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that by the time you get you come into contact, and then you begin to show that you begin to show signs and symptoms of the disease. It will be about that.
Now, before we end this, Doctor, can you please share with us some guidelines, some WHO guidelines that Namibia can follow as a country as it fight the spread of coronavirus?
Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to focus a lot more on the guideline that everybody can follow.
Okay.
And the guideline that everybody can follow is, we've been saying, wash your hands as often as possible with running water and soap. In the absence of that, use alcohol-based sanitizer. Maintain social distance.
1 meter, is that?
1 meter, and as much as possible, I mean, if you are not feeling well, don't go into crowds. Stay at home. Go to the health facility. Practice respiratory etiquette. If you are coughing, you don't cough into the air, cough into people, cough into your elbow, cough into a disposable tissue. When you are sick, you are not feeling well, immediately report to a health facility. Now, this we believe is doable by all. Now, if we're able to do this, we will see that we will be able to cut down the transmission, protect ourselves. The principles are that you need to protect yourself if you do this. You need to protect your family so that you don't come from outside into the family with the virus. So even when you're outside there, be careful. We also need to protect the vulnerable people in the population. And I mentioned those who are vulnerable to underlying health conditions. They need to be protected and not to be exposed to the potential risk. But also another very important group of people we need to protect will be the health workers. The health workers need to be protected. They need to be given all that they need to help us. So because if the health worker gets infected, the health worker is sick, who will look after us?
Of course. So
the health workers need to be given all the necessary personal protective equipment so that they're able to work and function out maximally, you know. So if we're able to protect these groups, ourselves, the family, the community, and health workers, will be contributing a lot to bringing down this outbreak. Of course, I mentioned that the approach is all government, all society. So when government is doing their part, we also have to do our part. And this is what we can do.
Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much for all your insight, Doctor.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, viewers, for tuning in. Let's keep safe, let's wash our hands, and stay out in the sun and the bright light. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, what's that? Yeah? And for our next clip, we have a sound recording with the Agribank CEO Sakaria Nghikembua, and he shares what impact the country's recent drought has had on the bank. He was also asked whether the 2019 election year made it difficult for the bank to attach farms. He also speaks on the Witvlei abattoir saga, and he spoke to Ugone Tlagi.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. I think the impact of the drought on the bank has been much more on the cash flows rather than on the bottom line. And the cash flows are really impacted by the fact that, our client had experienced reduced ability to repay their loans. And I think that's understandable in the current environment. We've been trying to manage this quite tightly to ensure that, at least as a bank, we are able to accommodate our clients so that they can have longer and more flexible repayment periods, while at the same time also making sure that we are able to disburse as much as we can in new loans. And some of those new loans have been intended to assist clients to at least cope with the effects of the drought, whether that's in the form of boreholes for water, whether that's in the form of loans or production loans to buy fodder, or in the form of loans to help them diversify and go into charcoal production and so on. But I think overall, it has been a very difficult environment. The effects of the drought continue to today, although we had received good rains in many parts of the country, and we are grateful for that. But it is an environment, I think, where we've been tested, and I think that we've managed so far fairly well. Now that's a good one. So we've got quite a rigorous process that we follow. So we have an internal process that we follow first at a pre-legal level, i.e. before we even go to our legal department. There are follow-ups that are done. There is contact that is made with the customer. There is attempts to make arrangements with the customer. And obviously there's a process to try and monitor any arrangements that have been made with the customer. Now, of course, if that doesn't work or the customer is not responsive, there is a process as well to escalate such cases to our internal legal division. And of course, they also have various processes that they follow there before such cases eventually actually end up with our external lawyers, who then obviously go to court and seek for default judgment. So there is quite a clear process. There are very clear policies that governs how we manage these cases, and we really only end up at court and perhaps eventually at auction if everything else fails. But throughout this whole process, the bank is quite accommodative. So even at the last minute, if the client is able to at least come to the party, and save themselves, we're quite willing to engage, we're quite willing to accommodate, and we are quite willing to go to the extent of putting off the auction. So we are quite fair. A lot of the cases that you see coming out in the papers, a lot of the auctions that you see being arranged are cases of clients who for years have actually either paid nothing or paid very little or have not honored any commitments. And we do not discriminate on the basis of who the client is or what their standing in society might be. We treat everyone as a client of the bank, and we operate accordingly. No, we do not mix politics with our work. I think we really operate this organization as a straightforward organization or bank that has a particular mandate that has to be sustainable, and that has to operate within the precincts of particular laws, policies, and procedures. So we don't mix our business with politics. We do not have any undue influence in terms of what to do and what not to do, and I think that our record speaks for itself. So throughout this year, specifically 2019 when we had elections, we have been following up on clients, we've been making arrangements, and where everything fails, of course, we've been going to court, and taking the process to its logical end. I understand the request by the PDM to be a request to government. I understand such a request to be a request from citizens of Namibia to their government. And I think that citizens have a right at any time to ask for help from their government. And I guess it's only government that really can, in financial terms, bail out the farmers. So it's up to government to consider such a request and to act appropriately. I think from our side as Agribank, we've always been accommodative, and any client of ours who has engaged us, who has been here and who has been talking to us exactly knows what that means. We try to accommodate, we try to reach agreements that are reasonable and fair, both for the bank as well as for the client. And I think our accommodative stance is really what we can do. And if you will, you can call that a form of a bailout. But I think it will be pretty difficult to try for us to put more money into any client who was already in arrears and unable to pay, because we actually just do not have such money. So if we don't get paid back, where do we get money to actually put in? But from the point of view of accommodating, having longer periods of repayment, looking at all options with the client, that is something that we are at any time willing to do. And I think that's our contribution to assisting our clients. Yeah, I think the first thing I'd like to make clear is that the Wetfly Abattoir is owned by Agribank. It belongs to Agribank, and there is no dispute about that. That has been confirmed by the High Court of Namibia in October last year, because there have been disputes from Wetfly Meat who have been leasing the abattoir, claiming that the property belongs to them. But that point has been made clear by the High Court of Namibia. So we applied to evict them from the property. They were evicted by the High Court in October, but of course, as with anything else in law, they had the option to appeal, and they've decided to appeal, and they've lodged their appeal. Of course, now we wait for the Supreme Court of Namibia to make a date available for the parties to go to the Supreme Court so that we can listen to the arguments of Wetfly Meat. And we really look forward to a speedy process, because we would like that abattoir to move into the hands of anybody who wants to use it productively. And so that it's useful not just to that community and the region where it's located, but also to the entire economy of Namibia. And we really look forward to a speedy adjudication of the matter in the Supreme Court.
And that's all we have time for in today's Evening Review. Please join us tomorrow. Be safe out there and take care. I'm Ashley Smith, the news editor of Namibian Sun.